Okay, I guess we'll get started. I welcome to the citizen science session with Reuben. I appreciate you all coming. I know right now there's a plethora of very good sessions, so I appreciate you all taking the time to be here today. I'm just going to give a quick intro. My name is Claire Higgs, and I am on the Education and Public Outreach team, and I am presenting some of this work from the citizen science team. So the citizen science team has members from a few different areas. So we have myself and Eric from education and public outreach. We have our in-kind contributors. So we have Chris and Aprojita. And we have community scientists for citizen science from the community science team. So we have Brian, Becky, and Suri. And of course, we have lots of support and advice and input from the Reuben community, which we really appreciate. So just setting the groundwork of what is citizen science and why it is important. So citizen science, of course, has many definitions, particularly like this one from Balcom 2015, saying citizen science is an open collaboration of members from the public participating in the scientific process, identifying research questions, collecting and analyzing data, interpreting results, and problem solving. And so this kind of captures many of the aspects of citizen science. Of course, citizen science takes many forms and is used in many fields, from astro, obviously, to analyzing handwriting and biology, ecology, you name it, the list goes on. And I apologize, still got the bottom bar that won't go away. Of course, this is a highly successful and unique form of analysis. And so, for example, Galaxy Zoo, which I think is familiar to most people in the room, has over 450 publications referencing it. Citizen science itself is far from perfect, and so Reuben, we're striving to make a really positive experience. So even the name citizen sciences is problematic, so it can be viewed as exclusionary. So just in general, we refer to it as citizen science to our scientist-facing audiences like you, but try and refrain from that language when facing the public. And of course, by default, it does not necessarily reach a nice broad group of participants as we'd wish, and it takes a real meaningful effort to be meaningful to this wider community that we'd like. So taking it back to citizen science with Reuben, of course, LSST will be a prime source for citizen science projects in many fields. And our goal as a citizen science team is to facilitate easy and straightforward project development for principal investigators and really highlight the amazing science from the Reuben Observatory for the public. And so we're working in collaboration with our in-kind contributors, the Zooniverse. So we have Reuben and Zooniverse working together. And we are building tools and a community for the Reuben Observatory, and we're ready to help you make projects happen. I can't get rid of the bar at the bottom. Just to be clear, our citizen science team doesn't run individual projects. We are helping you run projects, and so we're managing the system of projects and the Reuben infrastructure to enable projects. And so as we're developing this tool, we want this to be the best possible tool for you. So at this stage, we're really we have open ears, and we're really inviting your input into how we refine this tool for our community to use. And as well as important to keep in mind, the great part of this is that anyone can science. This is a great place for the public to be really engaged in the meaningful discoveries and be active part of the process for our community. So just a little outline for the session. I've just given you an introduction. We'll have Aaron and Chris give us 2 talks just about all the amazing things citizen science can do and give you that kind of feel for the world of citizen science. I'll give you a very brief overview, and then we have Becky and Sri who will give you a run through of the infrastructure that we've got available. And if you want to pull out your laptop and give it a go, it's all ready for you to go. And then we'll have a little, about a 25-minute discussion in which we'd love to hear your thoughts and of what we have built so far. Just some session logistics. So in the room, if you guys want to wave, so you have myself, we have Chris down at the front, we have Aaron over here, we have Eric over here, and we have Aprojita. And then online, we have Brian, Becky, and Sri that are there. For feedback, we'd love you to use the Slack channel. There's lots of us around, and so we can definitely answer your questions in real time. But you can definitely email us at any time or visit the website. I would encourage you to come to the EPO open house on Thursday. Most of us will be there. And so if you have any lingering questions that come up after the session, we can answer them there. I've also included a link that if you want to write a question anonymously, you're welcome to put a question there and we'll answer it there. So with that, I will hand it over to Eric.
Okay, yeah, thanks to Claire for organizing this session. I think the whole idea of Reuben building this platform and this pipeline to enable a lot of citizen science projects to launch is a really brilliant idea. And I do work for Reuben, but formally speaking, I don't actually work on citizen science within Reuben, but I happen to be a big citizen science aficionado and practitioner just for my own personal research projects, which I'll tell you a little bit about right now. So the project that I've mainly worked on is called Backyard Worlds Planet 9. This is a citizen science project that was launched and created with Zooniverse's project builder tool. So this is a really great setup that you can use to essentially launch a project. Anyone can do this, launch a project online to a massive audience, but you don't actually have to do any custom software development on your own, which really makes it a much easier and simpler and quicker process. So a little bit about what Backyard Worlds actually is. It's kind of like, I think of it as this combination of big data, though not as big as the data set that's going to come from Rubin LSST, plus citizen science. And the idea is that volunteers visually inspect what we call unwise time series image blinks, which originate from a NASA satellite called WISE, the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, which, as its name suggests, it takes data in the infrared covering the entire sky. And the idea is to search for brown dwarfs based on looking for objects that move over time in these time series blinks that we call flipbooks in Zooniverse terminology. To give you a sense of scale, there's about 50 trillion input pixels of raw WISE imaging data, which is a lot, but again, much, much less than what Reuben will produce during its LSST survey over 10 years. We have almost 80,000 registered users, and we estimate about 200,000 unique volunteer contributors. These are drawn from all 50 US states, plus Puerto Rico, DC, and 167 countries all over the world. And we've discovered about 4,000 confirmed brown dwarfs over the past 6 or so years. A little bit more now about who actually are these citizen scientists. They're not just stats to us, even though I did just show some stats. We really make an effort to get to know the folks that we're working with and to sort of mentor them through the scientific process and bring them into all parts of the scientific life cycle. And so you can see from this photo that there's quite a diversity in terms of where these people are from all over the US, but also all over the world. And if you look at this in terms of the breakdown of what their training is formally or what they do during the day for their day job, say, it ranges hugely, and also in terms of age. So you have anything from high school students to college physics majors to doctors and retired scientists and engineers. One thing that I've noticed in Backyard Worlds that's really important is the idea of community building through citizen science, that a citizen science project is not just equivalent to dumping a bunch of data online and hoping people will click on it. And so I don't really know what, if anything, Reuben has thoughts about in this regard. But one example of how we do this in Backyard Worlds is that we have our weekly science team telecons, which to a scientist maybe doesn't sound that fun to attend a telecon, but we always invite all of our volunteers who have voluntarily given us their email addresses. And so this is kind of a screenshot of a fun moment where we realized that David here was calling in from his high school lunch period somewhere in Texas. And so I just think this is really cool because, you know, in high school lunch period, I don't know what I was doing, but it certainly wasn't discussing science with NASA astrophysicists. I think this is a theme that's going to be highlighted later in the session and also by Chris. But one thing we've noted in our Backyard World citizen science experience is the idea of serendipity, and that sometimes the best discoveries happen by accident when you have a lot of human eyes working on the data and looking at it from different perspectives. And so this is one good example of this. It's our fastest moving discovery so far. It's a very, very weird brown dwarf that we've colloquially termed the accident. And it's now approved for JWST observing time in cycle 2. So this is just a really exciting example of how you don't always know exactly what you're looking for, and it's great to have more eyes on the data. My last slide, I think I'll foreshadow probably some of what will be discussed later, including what Chris says. The idea now has emerged of combining artificial intelligence with citizen science, given the rapid rise of artificial intelligence in our daily lives and the rise of its capabilities. And so as one example of this, again, using the Zooniverse project builder, just in late June, we launched another spinoff of Backyard Worlds called Backyard Worlds Cool Neighbors. And the idea is that we use pixel level deep learning to pre-select the brown dwarf candidates that then get shown to volunteers. So this is one of the ways that you can go about combining machine learning with citizen science in a way that's sort of more powerful than the sum of its parts. And I would note that so far this is going really well. We have more than 500,000 classifications in our first month. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thanks, Aaron. The Backyard Worlds team are an inspiration with the amount they're able to do with their volunteers. So if you haven't seen their project, I'd recommend looking at that or their papers to get some ideas. I'm Chris Lintop from Oxford. I'm the PI of the Zooniverse platform, which has partnered with the project to provide citizen science opportunities. I think my first LSST meeting was in 2009. And we sat and talked about, wouldn't it be lovely if this would happen? And so I'm really excited that we're very close to people using both the observatory and our systems, which still exist. We'll see more of the platform in a second, but what I thought I'd do was talk just about a few key ideas to put in your heads when thinking about the kinds of project that might work. And the first thing I really want to hammer home, which is something that we've learned again and again and again since we launched our first project, Galaxy Zoo, in 2007, is that the fundamental motivation for the couple of million people who've signed up for Zooniverse and participated in our projects is that they're motivated by doing science. So this may not be surprising, given that these websites offer a chance to do science, but it means, for example, that they're not motivated by seeing beautiful pictures of galaxies, which was our hypothesis when we started with Galaxy Zoo. And also when we started Galaxy Zoo, which was looking at Sloan survey galaxies, we thought maybe people would be motivated by being the first to see something. And it turned out there's no trace of that in lots of work that we've done and papers that we've done to study motivation. There's no trace of that. What most people want from these projects is a chance as a group, not as a set of individuals, but as a group, to make a contribution to this voyage of discovery about the universe that we're on. And so do not filter your ideas for whether the images are beautiful. Starters, scientists aren't great at thinking about which of our images are beautiful. That perfect PSF subtraction of a distant galaxy might be beautiful to you, perhaps not to others, but also it's not necessarily the filter to use. And just as a couple of key examples, one of the most popular projects on the platform, in fact, the most popular project that doesn't involve pictures of penguins, because there is a penguin exception to this. I said this to a group of astronomers in Europe, and a bunch of Belgian variable star people dressed up as penguins and then put pictures of themselves into their project. So you can do that. But Planet Hunters, there's no evidence that that worked. Planet Hunters, which is the most popular astronomical project on the platform, shows people graphs for fun. And with my science communication hat, I teach science communication, and I tell people that graphs are an internal language, that you can't assume that a public audience can quickly engage with a graph in the same way that many of us do. Planet Hunters has hundreds of thousands of people look at graphs for fun. The graphs are not beautiful, but they are interesting. It's the motivation of contributing to the great set of discoveries about exoplanets that motivates. And if you want a more practical test from a non-astronomical project, the Snapshot Serengeti project uses camera trap images from the Serengeti National Park. Lots of these are great. They're brilliant images of lions and zebra and giraffes and all sorts of things. But when half the time the project's out of data, we don't need the images to be classified for science. And we just put this little yellow banner on top that says, we don't need your classifications anymore. You can still click, you can still see the same images, you can still have exactly the same experience, but traffic is about 2% what it is when we require science. So this is a real test for me that people are motivated by science. The other thing that I think I want to point out is that these are often casual encounters with science. So on the right is an image. We installed Galaxy Zoo on a touch table at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, and I really like this as an image of somebody doing science. Right? That's what we all look like when things are going well, that momentary excitement. But the word casual is important here too. While, as Backyard World shows, lots of people get very into these projects and put huge amounts of effort in and can work on advanced data and write their own papers, and all of that's very important. One of the key principles behind Zooniverse and also the Rubin contribution to citizen science is that somebody should be able to casually fall into contributing to science. Like that you should follow a link from a friend, read a news story about a website, click through, be on the Rubin Observatory website because you've followed a news link, and then click and quickly participate. Because it's that sense of, I just did something that's really transformative. So the projects we're trying to build don't just allow for deep exploration with the data, they very deliberately allow people to do something quick that's useful, because that's the thing that transforms people's attitudes to science and turns them into people who think of science as something that they can do. And this is critical in getting over what I describe, borrowing a term from the museum world, as threshold fear. So in the museum world, this is the Ashmolean in Oxford, galleries and museums have quite imposing thresholds for all sorts of interesting cultural reasons. But what that means is that no one goes up the steps and into this museum unless they already believe, because of their background and culture, that they're going to get something out of what's going on inside. And nothing the museum does inside can change that. And so it's getting over the threshold. And in science, this is many people's experience of our subject. People hear about something as a scientific result or an article or a news story or an opportunity to participate, and they get the "I was terrible at that at school, science isn't for me" reaction. So if we can quickly get to the point where you classify a galaxy, look for a planet, try and find a brown dwarf, and then you say you did something useful, we can get people over that threshold and transform their attitude. So this sort of two modes is really important. We do want to build projects which involve quick initial engagement. And that could be anything from a few seconds to 5 to 10 minutes, I think. But it needs to not be spend 6 hours watching videos and learn basically undergrad stellar atmospheres and then we'll talk. Those things are cool, they're just different types of projects. And then thirdly, which Aaron touched upon, is that there's two kinds of science that seems to come out of these projects. So there's the science you thought you were going to do, want to classify galaxies, discover planets, find brown dwarfs. And then again and again and again and again and again in these projects, we found that it's the surprises that are interesting. So on the left here, these are images from a Hubble snapshot program called the Gems of Galaxy Zoo. So you can look at Bill Keel's paper for a range of the variety of things that other people were interested in once we showed them data through Galaxy Zoo. Obviously, there's huge machine learning potential here as well, and I point you to Mike Walmsley's work, amongst others. But on the right is the diagram that I've been using to think about how we might sort through the vast amount of data we've got in Rubin. So on the x-axis, you've got how interesting something is. On the y-axis, how unusual it is. In the bottom left are the things we spend most of our time thinking about, the things you might want people to classify. We've also got artifacts in the top left, unusual but not interesting. Bottom right, interesting but not unusual. I think those might be sort of your stunning spiral galaxies or your famous asteroids or something like that. But in the top right, we've got this opportunity to find things which are both unusual and interesting. And I think up there is a particular opportunity for this sort of citizen science when faced with the scale of Rubin data. So hopefully that gives you some ideas about what to think about. We need casual participation that meets people's motivations to do science and which enables discovery along the way. So that's our challenge. Luckily, Claire and the fabulous team have done most of the work already. So now we can find out how to do that.
If there's any questions, feel free to post on Slack, or if there's any in the room, we have time for probably a question or two before we go on to the next session. If there's anything for Aaron or Chris, otherwise we'll just keep rolling.
Thank you. This is Ashish Mahbub. So how do you see the best way to go ahead with LSST Rubin data? What kind of, I don't know how to say, partitioning of the data we may want to do to try to start putting it into something like
Yeah, so I think maybe we if it's okay, we might postpone that till we've talked through what we've done so far, and then we could see what else is there. But clearly some sort of clever filtering of whether you're talking about transients or the main data releases. A key to all of this is going to be this filtering. So I'll just point to Mike Walmsley's work as a good example of how to do that. And the links are on the previous slide. I failed to mention space warps, so Phil has grabbed them.
No, I'm not going to give you a hard time, but it's Phil Marshall here for those online. So a related question. How are the users at the Zooniverse, the Zooites, how are they feeling about AI?
So things, yeah, so things have got reasonably positive actually. So there's a history to this. So as we've introduced machine learning, we made a few initial missteps in talking about it on the platform. So one of the early things we did was we built a project, I think it was a supernova discovery project, where we said, challenge yourself against the machines. And that was incredibly unpopular. And it's unpopular because it doesn't sound, I now realize it doesn't sound like, can I contribute to science? It sounds like, do you want to do an exam for fun? You scored 7, the machine wins. So we've learned better than that. What we've done is started to talk about how we use machine learning as enhancing the science alongside the volunteers. So in Galaxy Zoo, for example, you can currently choose whether to have an unfiltered set of galaxies from the data, or you can see those where it's most helpful for the science to classify because they're going to improve a machine. And something like 96% of people choose the enhanced option. So as long as we talk about the machine and the people aligned to do the same science together, everything works out, and that's fine. It's setting it up as a challenge, and in particular projects which say, hey, people, if you provide a training set, then you won't be needed anymore, isn't a great sales line. And so that sort of sense of reaching the same goal through many different means works quite well. Okay.
Okay, so now we've got thoughts about citizen science in general in mind. I'm just going to bring us back to citizen science with Reuben. So just reiterating our goal here that we really want to lower the bar for making projects and make it easy for you as part of the Reuben community to highlight the amazing science that's coming out of Reuben and invite the public to participate in these discoveries. And so today, hopefully we're going to show you how easy it is to make a project by giving you a walkthrough in which you can make a project right now as you're sitting here, which you don't actually have to make public to the world, but you can give it a go. So how the process works is overall is we have developed kind of a sandbox notebook that exists on the Rubin Science Platform, or will exist on the Rubin Science Platform, and allows you to have this construction phase in which you can make a test project with less than 100 objects, whatever is appropriate for your field. And you can design your project, you can see what it looks like on Zooniverse, you can use the amazing project builder to mock it all up and see how everything looks and figure out what your volunteers are going to be interacting with. And at that point, we invite you to check in with our SitSci team, and we'll help you refine any things that need tweaking and give it a bit of an assessment and make sure everything is looking great, and then grant you permission to send as many objects are appropriate for whatever your project is and run your project. And then it's time to do science. You have hopefully a group of very engaged volunteers, and you can classify your data there. So the software we're providing is we're providing this set of Jupyter notebooks that will just programmatically allow you to send your data to a Zooniverse project. And so we have developed 3 different notebooks, and hopefully these are great launching points for whatever science you need to do. And so you can take one of our examples that will work for you and then kind of build and expand on that. So the first is a basic notebook, which just allows you to query the on the RSP using TAP and Butler queries, retrieve some classified data and send it to the Zooniverse. A second example uses the flipbook functionality. This is what Aaron mentioned in his Backyards Worlds, which allows you to show multiple views of an object. So this just is allowing you are showing you how to use some of the added functionality that exists on Zooniverse and how to kind of tap into that. And the third is one that will be based on an alert broker, which is a different data source. And so hopefully between these 3 different notebooks, this will hopefully give you a good starting point for whichever direction is most appropriate for your project. Currently, the basic version exists and is ready for you to try, which is what we'll be demonstrating, and you can make a project today. And the other 2 are in the works. So our team provides this pipeline connecting Rubin Science Platform to the Zooniverse, which alleviates the gargantuan task of having to download and upload data, and hopefully makes this step much easier. We can also help you manage your project. We're also providing a custom Rubin template on the Zooniverse, and hopefully creating a healthy community of volunteers on Zooniverse who are familiar with Rubin and familiar with Rubin data and excited to engage in this group of Rubin projects. We can also provide social media engagement, promotion, and also promotion and connection to our education investigations where appropriate to add value in both directions for the investigations and for your project. What we hope to have from our PIs to run a successful project are really keen PIs who are excited to engage with the public. As Aaron and Chris have mentioned, this engagement with volunteers is really necessary. It's not just a case of uploading data and walking away. So we're hoping to have volunteers or PIs from our community who are really excited to get involved. We're hoping for coordination and collaboration within our science community to really create a host of projects that the public can interact with. And we are supporting equity and accessibility initiatives within these projects to hopefully welcome in a broader group. And our team is here and available to support PIs through that process. I've added our social media up there in case you're not following us. A very brief timeline. So as I mentioned, our basic pipeline works and we're really welcoming community input from all of you. This fall, we're going to be refining some of our documentation and refining those more complex pipelines, the flipbook and the alert broker one. In the winter, we'll have a couple testing projects and we're building on that input that you provide and we're looking forward to it. And well before First Light, we hope to have all 3 notebooks ready with documentation so you can really plan ahead for your projects. So of course, there's various considerations to think about, one of which was it would be data rights. So data shared on the Zooniverse will public. And so our team is developing the documentation and support to help you navigate that and make sure that you are not confused by what you can and cannot do. So we'll be there to guide you through. So citizen science projects are an important, unique, and valuable part of Rubin. And so we'll hopefully alleviate any barriers you are facing in these terms. So I'm just going to put up a couple questions here. These are some kind of outstanding questions and thoughts we are still considering that we'd love to have your input on during our little town hall discussion after our notebook run through. But I just want to put them up here now just to get your mind thinking about some of these open questions. And if you want to start a conversation about any of these on our Slack channel while we're doing our walkthrough, that would be fine. But one of our questions is, what would make you most likely to take on a project? Like how can we make this the tool that you want to work with? An outstanding question that we're trying to navigate is what are we going to do when there are 2 projects that have very similar data sets and overlap? Having duplicated projects devalues the public's time, so that's not really a great route to go, but how should we navigate those issues? What is the time commitment that you are able to provide for a project like this? How much support do you need and where can we support you on that? And also what to do when a project is finished. How can we best respect the public's effort in classifying this data and to share it with our community? So I won't ask for answers on these now, but if you want to start mulling with these questions during the next session, that would be great. And okay, I am going to turn it over to Sri and Becky who are online. So I'm just going to stop screen sharing if I can. Okay, and hopefully, Becky, you can take it away.
Okay, I see that I am screen sharing, but I can't actually see the screen in the room. So does it look like it is on there?
We can see it. It looks great and we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. I also can't see anybody in the room. So Claire, I was actually going to ask you to be sort of like our intermediary. If anybody has like questions, I know there's a microphone floating around, but
Yes.
or maybe just like stop me questions come up throughout.
Okay, we will.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, welcome to the walkthrough portion of this session. Sari and I are going to walk you through our citizen science notebook, the one that is done and ready to go that Claire was talking about. Oh, wow. Now I can see everyone in the room. Hello. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. So like the town hall we're about to go into, we really want to get your feedback about the aspects of this notebook. So please ask questions either via a hand raise on Zoom or a hand raise in person if you're in the room. We want to hear your general questions live. If you're having some sort of a technical issue, I think it would be better to take a screenshot and slap that on the on the Slack channel. We have a whole team of people that will be watching the Slack channel, so we'll try to get to the technical issues that way. And this is the Slack channel name. Okay. So I want to give a brief overview of what the RubinVerse and more specifically the Citizen Science Notebook is setting out to do, just to give you a picture, as Claire said, of the sort of gargantuan systems that we're working within. Okay, so before we get to the notebook itself, I want to talk about where the notebook stands to unite the three key components of the broader Rubin and citizen science ecosystem. So the first key component, hopefully everybody is aware of at this meeting, is the Rubin Science Platform. And the relevant subcomponents for this citizen science walkthrough are the Butler and TAP query. So we'll focus mainly on those. Also relevant is that there are numerous awesome tutorial notebooks on the Rubin Science Platform. We'll talk a little bit about those. Just to be super clear, those are separate from our citizen science tutorial notebook, but they are very useful if you're doing a citizen science project. They give numerous great examples of Butler queries. Okay, the second component of this larger ecosystem is the EPO data center, or the EDC, acronym in an acronym. This is relevant for us because this is the bucket that hosts the citizen science data. And then the third key component is, of course, the Zooniverse. And the Zooniverse is the platform that hosts the citizen science projects. And so it actually allows you as the PI to do your citizen science project, and more importantly, to interact on a loop with citizen scientists. We won't have a ton of time to talk about this today, but the importance of this is beyond just doing some sort of classification for your project. There's also tools that the Zooniverse provides for asking questions beyond that and like discussing with citizen scientists, and this can really enrich a science project. Okay, and then the star of the show is the Citizen Science Notebook. And this is the tool set that will allow you to move seamlessly between these three main components. And that's key because we're going to talk about moving large amounts of data around all of these platforms. Okay, so getting a little bit more specific, this is what we're calling the workflow of what we want to walk through today. And we've color-coded all of these boxes by which key component they belong to. So for example, pink is the Rubin Science Platform relevant components. And throughout today, as we go through these piece by piece, we'll describe what each of these components means in more detail. This is just the scaffolding for our presentation. Okay, so part one. Hopefully, okay, we're going to assume everybody has a RSP account. Now I'm going to start the walkthrough portion of this. So I have this other window open. The first step is to go to data.lsst.cloud. And I'll be showing you on the left what this actually looks like. It should look like this. You may have to log in. On the upper right, I am already logged in here. It will ask you for your identity provider. Once you're logged in, go ahead and like open a notebook instance. We should be able to get away, or actually please do open a small instance since maybe many people are doing this. get to reflect on our days while this is happening. The next step as we're waiting for this to open is going to be to grab this repo. So can we actually paste? Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to paste what you would have to type into our Slack channel. So it's a git clone command with this repo. Oh, I have it on a slide. Great. And once this instance starts, you can open a terminal window and maybe do like a PWD to see where you are. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so it's not quite so small for people in the room. So you should be just in your home directory. You'll see that in this home directory, you have a notebooks folder. This is the normal RSP notebooks that I mentioned earlier. What I've done is created a PCW 2023 folder that I'm now going to go into, but you can also type that git clone command just here in your home directory. So I'm going to go in there. Oops. And I'm going to git clone our citizen science repo. Okay, so now you should be able to go into this folder and you will see many things that we have prepared for you. Okay. Oh, I think I'll go ahead and open this now. So you're within this folder. The relevant notebook for today is the citizen science testing notebook. So how I like to open this is actually going through the folder structure. I find it easier to conceptualize this. You'll want to double click the citizen science testing notebook, and that will open it here. Very beautiful. Before we actually begin to run any cells in this notebook, though, we're going to take you directly to the next step, which is to make a Zooniverse account and design a project. And you have to do this because the first step of running the notebook is to actually link to that Zooniverse account. Okay. So that just looks like going to zooniverse.org. You can see the recipes I was looking up on Google. And I'm already logged in here, but in the upper right corner, you should see a box that says register. I know it's a little bit small here. And that will pop up this whole registration page where you can decide on a username, password, and an email address. So go ahead and fill this out. We'll give everyone like a minute to go ahead and register if they haven't already. Oh, thanks, Tom, for putting it in the Zoom chat as well. Maybe I'll ask during this moment of filling this in if anybody has any questions so far.
Yeah, if there's any questions in the room, and Becky, I'll just let you know, there's like, not everyone in the room has laptop open. So
Okay.
keep trundling along.
That's why we also have the like live, like me doing this live is for that purpose.
Yeah.
Thanks, Reed. Yeah, citizensciencetesting.ipython. Okay. I think I'm going to move on since most people are not doing this live. Okay, so once you have a Zooniverse account, you can then go to this build a project tab. Again, apologies, this is kind of small on here. It's in the top black toolbar here. So clicking on build a project, you'll see that I already have 3 projects. You can click on create a new project if you do not already have projects. I have created an example project for this workshop. So I'm going to click into that. Okay, so this is the project build window, just to give a very brief and incomplete tour of all the awesome things that Zooniverse can do. We're going to highlight a couple of things here. First of all, you have your project title. This is important because this shows up to link this project to the citizen science notebook. And so what I've put in a teal box here is your project slug, which we will use in the notebook, which is basically your username / project name. And then there's places to put description, introduction. You can always go back and edit these things later. We'll also highlight a few things on the left. So there's a visibility button. In order for the Citizen Science Notebook to see your project, you have to click public here. So this does not mean that your project is going to be launched on Zooniverse imminently. This just means that you'll be able to find your project via the notebook. We also wanted to highlight this subject set bar. And so actually this reminds me, I need to delete this subject set. This is where the data will go that you upload to the Zooniverse. So right now with a new project, this should be empty. Let's leave this, perfect. So if I go here again, no subject sets currently exist, and we will be able to see a subject set there by the end of the tutorial. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to highlight here. Right, okay. So we now have a project on Zooniverse that we can link to the Citizen Science Notebook. So we're going to go back to the notebook and we're going to skip over a lot of this introduction material. Just know that this will be useful to read over at some point. Okay, so the first step to connecting the Citizen Science Notebook with Zooniverse is to go ahead and install all the relevant packages. So we have a utils module here. Go ahead and enter the email that you have linked to Zooniverse here. And then there's a spot to input your slug name. So again, if you go to project details, there's this hyperlink. What you're going to want to do is grab everything after that first project /. So I'll show this when I actually paste this in here. So mine is Rebecca.Nevin / name of the project. Okay, so running this cell is going to run all this relevant materials that we have here that are relevant for things like the Panoptes client, things that link your project to the Zooniverse and have the utilities to upload data. Okay, so it's going to take a minute to run. And then it's going to prompt you to log in. Do we have this? Okay, so here, this is kind of an odd thing. My slug name is Rebecca spelled out Nevin, but my username is actually Rebecca Nevin. Super secret password that you have now entered, and you are now logged into the Zooniverse, which I did correctly, yay. Okay, maybe we'll pause here before we go to Sri. Does anybody have any questions at this point about the initial linking of this notebook to Zooniverse? We're next going to go into uploading some data. Chris says live demos scare me. True.
I think we can keep rolling on.
Okay, Sri, all you.
Okay, thanks, Becky. So let's move on. Right, so now assuming you have a Zooniverse project set up and now like your Rubin Science Platform is talking to Zooniverse, we'll now go ahead and get some data and send it to Zooniverse. So if you go to the next slide, yeah, so if you run the cell, what we're doing here is setting up the tab and butler query. I think Becky, I think you have to like go to the next slide again. Yeah, so as most of you know, the tab service is basically retrieving the tabular data that you want to send to Zooniverse, and then the butler is getting the cutouts to make your project. And here I'm basically like showing how the setup butler function looks like. It's just setting up the tab and butler query. And in this example, we are using data preview for our example. Okay, if you go to the next slide, in this tutorial, we are basically sending just 5 images. And here we are saying, okay, let's get these 5 sources from a radius of 1 second with the shown array and deck, and then go ahead and run this cell and the next cell. What this next cell is doing is, like if you go to the next slide, and this is how the function looks like, and don't focus on everything in this function, just wanted to show how this query is written. Here we are getting the object ID, the array deck, and some flux values for these 5 sources. Again, if you want to modify this query, I suggest you look at the tutorial notebooks, which give good examples on how to write tag query and how to write Butler queries. Okay, moving on. So running that cell is basically giving you the tabular data for the 5 sources we want. Okay, so there is a question on Zoom. You can also like post on Slack and people will get back to you.
Tom will answer you on the Slack channel.
And then if you're on the prep table, it's basically like showing you a nice format for the queried table. And here you can see the object ID and array deck and the flux values for the 5 sources. Okay, moving on. In the next cell, if you're on the next cell, which is running this make manifest with images function, this function is what is like getting cutouts using Butler and then creating this manifest CSV file that you see on the slide. So both of these are gonna be like zipped and sent to Zooniverse. And briefly, how this manifest with images function looks like. Again, don't focus on everything that's in this function. Just wanted to highlight this butler.get function, which is basically getting these deep coad images. And then we are also creating a dictionary for our manifest file. And this dictionary should always contain the file name and the object ID. So you always want to have that information associated with your cutouts and sent to Zooniverse. And all the others can be modified according to what you want to be associated with your cutouts. Okay. Now moving on, and if you run the cell here, the plotting cell, you should be able to see how the cutouts look like for our 5 sources. And then the manifest list, which is on the next slide, is basically a dictionary again for the 5 sources with all the information associated with each cutout. Moving on, if you run the next cell, the write manifest file is basically taking this dictionary and then converting it into a CSV file. So both the cutouts and the manifest file are in a directory that is going to be zipped. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So assuming now that you have your cutouts and your manifest file associated with your cutouts that you want to send to Zooniverse, the next thing that's going to happen in this big picture is that they're going to be zipped and then moved to the EPO data center. And the EPO data center, the RSP data exporter, is the first thing it's going to do is check with Zooniverse and then look into the project and see if there is any subject set that is that exists for this data. If not, it's going to create a subject set for you. And then it's going to take this zipped images and the manifest file, and it's going to upload it to a citizen science bucket. And this is where the URLs are created that the Zooniverse can then like look up and get data from the bucket. Okay. Now let's run the cell. Let's send this data to Zooniverse. When you run the cell, it's basically running the send image data function, and then it's going to output every step of the process that is going through when you try to send the data. Okay, so now it has printed a bunch of messages. You can see some of these, like it's zipping all of these cutouts, and it's uploading them to the citizen science bucket. And a new subject set is now created on Zooniverse. And the manifest URL is now sent to Zooniverse, so now Zooniverse can get this data. So once all of this runs successfully, you should have received an email notifying you that the subject set is now created. Okay, so yeah, you can see now that there is a subject set that's created and all the 5 cutouts are now uploaded on Zooniverse. Okay, Becky, do you want to take away and explain what's going to happen after the cutouts are sent?
Yeah, do we have any questions at this point about the sending the data before we go to retrieve the data?
I'm sorry, that was a little rushed, but you can always go back to this and run through this and ask us questions if you have on Slack.
Are there any questions in the room? And yeah, these slides are a great resource that will be on the PCW website to refer back to as making projects. If there's any questions, we can, I think it would be good if we move to the discussion section once in a minute, once you're ready.
Cool. Yeah, there was one question in the Slack. Basically, sometimes the imports don't work. That's like an internal thing, and restarting the kernel is good for that. But we will move on for now. Okay, so now you have sent some data to Zooniverse. Let's say you go ahead and like run your entire project, create a workflow on Zooniverse, get some classifications going. Many of you will obviously not be able to do this next step currently because you haven't had time to do classifications on your projects or to get classifications on your projects. So I'm just going to show you what happens after this interfacing step. And we do have this section in the notebook called retrieving the data that's very short, but allows you to link and pull data down from Zooniverse. So how to download the classifications to the citizen science notebook. We have this one cell here. This is linked to a different project that I have on Zooniverse that has classifications that Sri and I did for some of the Reuben data. And so this project is a project that I own. You have to be added as an owner of the project to do what I'm about to do, which is run this cell. It's going to prompt you again for Zooniverse credentials. Same thing as before. And now I get this excellent data frame out from this like retrieve data utility that we have created for you. And I have a slide on this. Oh, I did want to note that this project number is if you go to your project page, this is in the upper left. This is this tiny little number. And what you're getting out is a table. It's a massive table. One of the important columns of this table, which is kind of cut off by both of these screens, is the annotations column, which you can see here what all of our tasks are. So our tasks, we're asking users, is this a galaxy? And the answer is basically yes or no. And we sort of just randomly input that, for example. So you could imagine grabbing this, using this cell, and then proceeding to do science with the classifications. Okay, I think that was very brief, but that's all I have for retrieving data. I think we're ready to move on to the town hall.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Becky and Suri. So hopefully our hope was your takeaway from this is the fact that it's very easy to have a project on Zooniverse in no time connected to the Rubin Science Platform. So really the options are endless and all we need is your creativity and great science to make great projects. I'm just going to share screen again. Okay. Okay, so in this section, I really wanted to get some input from your community. So again, I have just relisted these questions that I teased earlier today, which is hearing from you. Thank you. What do you need to take on a project? Like what functionality do we need in the tool? What support can we give you from the Zooniverse side to make a great to make it easier for you to start a great project? And we would love to get your thoughts on how you feel about overlapping projects, how we can best navigate this within our community. As I said before, having two of the same project divides the amount of time that our volunteers are going to spend doing things, probably not quite literally, but devalues the time of our public classifying data. So we want to avoid that. However, we don't want to limit the number of projects. We'd love to support our community as much as possible. So your thoughts on how to navigate this problem would be great. We'd like to know what sort of time commitment you're able to give to a project, what sort of support can we give you to reduce this time commitment to something that is manageable and can work for you, whether it's through providing connections to the education materials so you can connect your projects that way, or is it social media? What do you need? And also this thought of what do we do when a project is finished? How can we share the data and archive it and respect the public's efforts. So I'd really like to open the floor up to any thoughts that are in the room or any other questions that I haven't listed on here. That's great. So if there's anyone wanted to contribute? I know it's end of day. It's hard. Sarah.
I can make a comment. So I think for the third bullet on weekly time commitment, I think that's quite hard to assess because you've got all the preparation time. But I think the thing that always gets underestimated is the engagement that a team needs to have once a project is live. So that live period where you've got kind of people classifying, they also want to talk to you as scientists and team members on the talk platform. And it's really important when you think about your time commitment for a Zooniverse project or the RubinVerse project, that you've got your team engaged and willing to spend even a little, it can just be 5 minutes a day. But if you appear on talk, it helps to engage the community further. So don't underestimate that part of the work.
Yeah, I think that's undoubtedly true. I will say that we've had a lot of success in projects that have seasons or periods where they come and go. I mentioned Snapshot Serengeti earlier, but that works for science too. So you could plan to have a term, a fortnight, a month where your project is active and invest in that time, and then have a fallow period while you look at the data and analyze it and then come back. That works really well with how people engage. So I think it's more about matching your ambition in terms of how much data you want to the time that you've got. Rather than necessarily saying, because I can't sustain this for, we've got projects that have been running for 15 years, but I can't sustain this for years. I can't do this project. It's more about what can I get out of the month that I do have time to talk to my community. But we do see that in projects where scientists don't talk to the community, they drop off and cease to be useful because people are motivated by contributing to science. And if you're not there, at least in a regular, if not frequent way, then the participants lose their belief that they're doing anything useful.
And I think this idea of seasons is particularly interesting when we're thinking in the context of Reuben, because there'll be an annular data release, and depending if that's kind of your data source, or whereas if you're something that is being more based on an alert broker, then you have a very different kind of seasonality. So I think it's going to be an interesting, there'll be differences between Reuben projects about how that seasonality works.
Yeah, you mentioned social networks and being able to give support for that, but bigger support may be needed to in fact do some data science or analysis of the data sets, because not every group that has ideas about how to put things in will be able to do that. And that is where actually some of the hierarchical stuff may come in, just like what Gravity Spy did. They initially did a generic thing, and then they had their users split in different ways. And now I believe they're doing much deeper things. So that's something that could be done with seasons also. But again, there, I suppose Zooniverse already has support for something like that. Would that be available? And the related question is, right now, Zooniverse has certain limits like 10,000 images. So how would that come into picture, or how can we overcome that?
Sure. So yeah, I didn't talk about Gravity Spy, which is a fabulous project. And there, if you look on Archive for Gravity Spy papers, there's some nice descriptions of what's one of our more complex projects. It's looking at noise from LIGO. So this is, and Virgo, I should say, from gravitational wave detectors. So it's literally a project where people look at noise for fun and try and classify it. The aim of the project is not to discover new astrophysical sources of gravitational waves. It's to help scientists classify the noise so that they can remove them. And it amazes me that people participate in this project, and they do. The Zooniverse is one long history of me being surprised by what people will do. But as was mentioned, there's a hierarchical system. So you start off classifying common noise types and then learn more and filter more as you go. All of that infrastructure is available for anyone to use. It's at a more not advanced level, but there's more to it than we've set up in the notebooks for Reuben. But yeah, that's available for anyone. You're right that you could run a first level analysis and then come back and do a second. People have also done stuff with the mobile app. So you can create a project that works well on a simple mobile app, usually for yes/no questions. And so people have done that as a second level of analysis as well. Your second question about, yeah, there's a nominal limit of 10,000 images that you can upload. Our anticipated use for this system is, to begin with, to just upload a small amount of data so you can build your projects, but then you can upload large data sets. As ever, on request, we can remove that limit for any given user. So it's mostly there so that people don't start by uploading 2 million images and work from there.
Sorry for jumping in. I just wanted to point out that Meg Schwam is online with a question with their hand up.
Thanks, Brian. Meg, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about sort of thinking about that projects that overlapped in subject area, and that what you're thinking of, because I do worry that given that anyone can do Rubin data analysis, no one's allowed to have a specialized area. How you sort of navigate that issue of people coming with projects that might be a similar area but doing different things, and how much time the EPO team wants to really look into this. So I guess my question is thinking about, in terms of those complexities, is it only that the first person that gets there then gets to do it, or what is the current sort of thinking on this? Obviously you don't want exactly this, you don't want 5 galaxy zoos, for example, but if there's one project looking for comet tails and asteroids, and one project looking for comet tails and or whatever features of activity in centaurs, are they not allowed to both exist if they're asking slightly different questions and doing slightly different techniques? Because it would, if there's going to be these restrictions, knowing about it as clearly as possible before the start of operations will be helpful for us as a community to sort of try to navigate people merging into teams or encouraging people to work together further if there's going to be these kind of restrictions.
Yeah, thanks for your question. Yes, it is. I think it is a tricky thing, and the reason we're asking it now is because I completely agree that it's a great time to talk about it now, as opposed to as we approach having data to actually work on, and so we can coordinate. I think I have a list of things we don't want, and so we don't want a ton of overlapping projects. We don't want a first come first serve system, and we don't want to exclude people from doing citizen science, which is not very helpful, because that's what we really need, is a list of things we do want. And so ideally, I think what I would hope is that there's a lot of space in our existing science collaborations and in this community that already exists to hopefully have some of those conversations and such, create projects that are large and inclusive, particularly for these ones that I think are, the ones you can envision beforehand. And so I don't have a great answer, which is why I think I've posted it as a question. But that is kind of what we're thinking is, yes, having something as a first come, first serve system, or having, exclusionary system is not the approach we'd like to take. And so I think the answer that I would love to have is just amazing collaborations within our community, making these awesome projects and working together. I know that's probably not completely practical, but that is something that I'd love to aim toward. Any more thoughts on that matter?
May I add a little bit to that, Claire?
Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Sure. So Meg, I'm glad you brought this, or I'm glad you put sort of a finer point on this. We spent a lot of time thinking about this because we are concerned about it. We're trying to conjure a system in which like everyone gets to participate in the thing they want to do in a fair way. So we're trying to do research into, for example, how collaborations have worked in recent years, say the DES collaboration. Not as an example, but just as a point of information, like how did they decide projects that may be that there may be a lot of people who want to be a lead on or participate in. So we're trying to be systematic about how we develop a structure for this, because I think it's important to all of us. And another point that sort of increases the importance, I think, is when we think about scientific collaborations and equity, one example that has come to mind is that we've discussed a little bit is, if there is a clash between researchers for other professional reasons not in this area, how do we not have that sort of for example, how do we not have that come down on the junior researcher who might end up feeling excluded if they can't work with a senior researcher that they didn't have a good professional relationship with. So we're thinking about a lot of these different angles, and it's important to us. So I would be super interested to hear if you have any ideas that would point us in a given direction. I think we have ideas, but we're still trying to figure it out. But it's super important.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for giving some of that context. I would say particularly, I think the science collaborations also are very different. I would say, just giving example, solar system, a lot of our data is public. And so, or in the alert stream. And so getting people to work together is very different. And then dark energy science collaboration, for example, where you really need some of the derived data products to do your key science. And so I think there'll be differences between the different science collaborations, for example, what they want to do. So it would be great to start these conversations, I think, with the science collaborations, that this time next year, we have a much better idea that we can start brainstorming those projects and either trying to create those new collaborations or be very clear about what will happen if there's projects that are similar. And maybe if they're similar, but not exactly the same, that's okay. But understanding if that's off the table, I think would be really helpful. So maybe it's presenting at one of the PST science collaboration co-chair meetings might be a good starting point to start that conversation.
But and I'm glad you mentioned that. Just sorry, Tom, just really briefly, a quick response here is that actually is one of the things that's on our docket to do, is start jamming with the different science collaborations to like get a better sense of the culture and what different people need. So yeah, thanks for that sort of reminder on our to-do list, that given that now we're going to be done with PCW soon, that's probably one of the things we'll be able to start working on, is going out and talking to people. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. Yeah, it's definitely important. And I think one of the things we're also cognizant of is we don't want to completely shoulder the science collaborations with yet another task, because I know that is there's human resource limited. But yeah, I think the science collaborations are going to be key in this discussion. I think Phil, you have a comment?
Yeah, so listening to this and wondering how it's all going to work. What's your thinking so far on this key transition between the construction phase and what's the next phase called? The live phase, the project phase, yeah. So will there be any kind of critical review at that point between construction and project?
Thanks. Yeah, I think in that phase, we're not thinking of, we don't want it to be a kind of intimidating task, but I think having a check-in with the citizen science team to go over a few things using the Zooniverse's amazing experience on what makes a good project. So just having those eyes on to see whether those kind of principles are being followed, checking out for data rights and make sure that everything's looking as it should, and having that kind of moment of just kind of careful consideration and kind of a second set of eyes. And so it's not a kind of formal evaluation, but more of a friendly check-in before it's launched into the world. So that's kind of how we're kind of approaching it.
That's also when you'll find some duplicates.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so that, and I think that will give us a moment to make sure that our citizen science team is fully aware of the landscape of Rubin projects that is out there. And so we will know if we are having massively duplicated projects. Yeah. Chris, I don't know, do you want to say anything about your duplicate thought? Okay. That's good.
I was just going to say about Gravity Spy. In LIGO, we're very proud of our noise. We have the most noise. We have the best noise.
Well, you have interest.
We have more noise than signals.
I'm just because I'm not sure if folks are able to look at the Zoom deal, but we've got Tom with his hand raised on the Zoom. If we're ready for another virtual question.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, Tom, did you want to unmute and go ahead?
Sure, thanks. Thanks for an interesting and fun session. This is in regard to the question about time commitment. And I don't have a concrete project in mind, but I could envision wanting to do a project as, say, part of a broader impacts, part of a NSF proposal. So that raises a couple questions. So one would be whether it's beneficial or desired to discuss potential, proposed projects that would be contingent on future funding with you folks while one is writing a proposal, before a proposal is submitted. And then second, whether there's a mechanism or a desire to partially support the team through grant funds. That might not be possible if it's funded through the project, but I didn't know if that's something that PI's proposers should be thinking about.
Hi, Tom, it's Chris here. Thanks. Yeah, good thought. So on the first one, for a Zooniverse, with my Zooniverse hat on, we'd certainly be very keen to talk to people who are proposing things like this as part of NSF or any other grant broader impacts. We much prefer that to discovering later that somebody has proposed to use the system. But we have template support and suggestions on how to present such projects. So that's a good note, and we'll make sure those resources get shared with the Rubin community as well. I think these can be very effective projects for those proposals because they deal nicely with the objection that's often raised as to how the research case feeds into the proposed engagement or vice versa. We've seen success recently, particularly where people are doing more than just building the project. So for example, a case that says that one would build a Zooniverse-like project, but then work with a local community or an underserved community to give them early access to that data or to prioritize their use would go down well. On the funding one, I will, I don't know, is there anyone in the room who has money? Yeah, I think that we're not anticipating being able to support people directly with cash, but certainly shared data analysis and so on should reduce the burden on running one of these.
But my question was actually about whether a proposer should, is there some mechanism for a proposer to seek funding that can help a Zooniverse?
Ah, yes, my favorite question. No, thank you. That's useful. At present, we don't ask people to do that. So we have support for the Zooniverse platform from a variety of sources, including as an in-kind contribution from LSST UK. I would say that there's no need to do that at the minute. That's not to say that I have 12 years worth of Zooniverse platform funding in my back pocket, but I don't think we're anticipating needing to seek grant support in that way. So you should add the money to your own efforts rather than send us a check.
Thanks.
I can't believe I've said that out loud.
Yeah.
May I add a little bit to answer Tom as well?
Go for it.
We have a second here. We have time. Good. Okay. Yeah, Tom, I appreciate you raising some of these questions. Something that we've been brainstorming in our group is how to provide either say at least I think our scope right now certainly is at least to provide consultation or some kind of guidance when it comes to equity and justice aspects of involving the broader publics in this kind of topic. And this is something we've been, this kind of project, and this is something we've talked about a lot. We don't have like firm guidelines yet, but we've been thinking about what are the ways that we can best help, say, have a RubinVerse project be like have very higher than typical engagement with marginalized or underserved groups. So this is of interest to us. We're thinking about how to like find exactly the right lane that we pursue in this. One of the things that came up during some of this brainstorming was maybe it would make sense to have different projects coordinate amongst each other for an NSF broader impacts thing instead of having everyone go their own direction. So just as an idea of something that might be in the scope for us to help with would be to maybe help coordinate or at least like keep people in contact so that people aren't working at cross purposes or competing in some way and people working in a more complementary fashion. So there's that little brainstorming happening, and there's also the brainstorming happening about how can we help people reach communities that are underserved. So that's been part of the discussion. If you'd like to join in more in depth in part of that discussion, we would certainly welcome your ideas.
Hi, this is Ashish Mahabal again, and last 2-3 points are connected to something that we have been doing and would like to do further. So recently we developed a game for Androids called Zarth, where we put fresh ZTF transients every night onto Sky Map so people can catch them. So somewhat like Pokemon Go, but for transients. Right now it's only outreach, and we have leaderboards and various gamification thing, but there is great potential for both STEM education to introduce it into classrooms as well as for citizen science. And it could be combined with these Zooniverse notebooks or RubinVerse notebooks to try to put the same data into that and do citizen science, because among other things, we also put 2 ambiguous classes in that, where more than one ZTF classifier claimed those transients as their own, and we don't know why. And that's something that would be great to hear from students. So if we wanted to do something like that, would there be a path to go in that direction with the current setup, also using perhaps some LSST simulated data? Because it's the way the thing is made is one can, instead of ZTF, have transients from anywhere. So in fact, one of the things that I'm planning to do, and that comes to the money part, is write to NASA, because they would be interested in using it for, perhaps I'm hoping, for some of their own data sets from various satellites, etc. And so how can ZTF and LSST and NASA work together to, in general, go in that direction?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, because it's outside the scope of currently the tools that we have been building and developing. However, I think this whole citizen science effort with Reuben depends on what our Rubin Science community is bringing to us. So that's, as part of the Rubin Science community bringing in this novel approach, it's definitely something worth kind of considering, because I think currently it lies a little outside of what we currently been working on, but is part of hopefully the family of Rubin Citizen Science Project.
So I think that the current things that are being done within Rubin, like Elastic, where they are coming with various light curves and so on, those can form a perfect data set to go into one of these notebooks, right? And so it's very related to that in that sense. So we don't have to bring ZTF in at all, but just using those elastic like light curves and putting them in there. And then at later point, trying to connect it on some layer would be possible. So that is a project that can be done today, taking elastic light curves and making a notebook out of that. So would we be in a position to do that right now? I tried to get an account and I'm still waiting for confirmation.
Slow Wi-Fi, right? I think it's definitely something we should discuss further. We'll have to chat after, because I think, yes, hearing what our community is excited about and what you want to do is definitely this is the moment to see how we incorporate things and how we can build our infrastructure.
Could I interrupt really briefly and just I'm sorry, I can't see in the room and I don't think I know who was just speaking, but whoever was just having the exchange with Claire, would you mind sending a quick ping to us in the Slack so that we know who you are and we can stay in touch with you? Oh,
We'll be in touch.
I see the Tom just put a name down. Thanks. Great to meet you, Ashish.
Hi, so Colin Chandler, Active Asteroids project, but also at Link Framework. So some ulterior motives in this coming question. What I would like to know is if the platform, because this is to point number one, first sub bullet, how can we make this best tool for me? So I have a project that actually was created with LSST in mind. And so all I need on the platform is to be able to transfer maybe millions of thumbnails of image cutouts of the size that I want, and then run some pre-trained machine learning models on them to do some filtering and some other automated vetting, and then to be able to upload that over to Zooniverse. And then I also need a place to archive all the data, because I've learned that we can't trust the archives to keep produced data necessarily. We've been burned a bit there. So I could also use a few 100 terabytes of space if you could spare that. Thanks.
Claire's team will be happy to provide all the space. No, so I think the way to think about what we've showed today is that anything you can do on the science platform, you can then transfer across to Zooniverse for citizen science, and anything you produce in Zooniverse, you can pass back to Rubin. So if you can run your machine learning and do your filtering and generate your images within the science platform, you could do all of that there and then transfer the outputs across. I'm not enough of an expert on the science platform to know whether that's true or whether you'll need to do something else. But the point is that the team are around to support projects like yours. And so what we should do is start talking about how to make, because active asteroids, if you don't know it, the rest of you in the room and online, is such a good example of a project that's sort of Rubin ready, right? You've done the work, it's already producing science, and we're about to flood you with an enormous amount more data that we want people to go through. So yeah, let's have a chat about I think what we probably need is a whiteboard and a set of boxes, and we'll just look at where different bits of what you want to do should exist. Zooniverse also has integrations with machine learning where we're assuming that you're running the machine learning, but you could talk to Zooniverse about what that means for the images in our system. So it might make sense to transfer the images from the platform across and then filter. But let's just have a look as a group and work out what makes sense. Anyone with complex or developed ideas for projects like that should just chat to us.
Yeah, I'll just add that we'd love to have a look at what you want and see what we've got. And if there is things that we can't provide right now, it'd be great to identify those at this stage, and then we can fix it and make it the tool for you. I mean, before data would be great.
Okay, I have a question and then a comment, if that's okay. And the comment might be a good one to finish on, maybe. We'll see. So the question is related to the first point. I think I could imagine if I was thinking of taking on a project, I'd want to know what tools are going to be available to me to analyze the classifications. So not just get all the raw classifications, but be given some help in turning them into, let's say, principal classification probabilities or something like that.
Yeah, so the other side of all of the infrastructure we're building is documentation, and we're drawing on expert knowledge like that coming from Afrojita to provide kind of some examples and some guidance on that front as well. So hopefully the documentation side that we'll have will, if not give someone all the tools they need, at least a place to start and some support in how to navigate that, the other side.
Could I ask a follow-up question to Phil?
Yeah, good.
Phil, were you saying that you're looking for users to provide a probability, like a floating point, instead of just a binary thing? Is that, or did I mishear you?
The question was more about tools for analysis of the classification data. So the tutorial that we just saw kind of stopped at getting back the classification data. So it was more about, is there going to be a set of tutorials on how to analyze the classifications? Is that something that we could contribute to, and so on?
Oh, thank you for clarifying. Gotcha. Okay.
Then my comment was, I mean, we didn't get a chance to clap Sri and Becky after their walkthrough, but we really should, because it's extraordinary progress to be able to do this from the notebook aspect, end to end, and see it in a few minutes. I mean, I think there's a few of us in this room who have spent a ton of time setting up citizen science projects with the Zooniverse, and to see it work so smoothly and so quickly is just amazing. So I think that deserves a big round of applause. Great work, team.
Oh wow, Phil, you do know how to do the last word. Good on you. Yeah, I agree.
Yes. And I will say that's a great comment, because I think right now it looks deceptively easy, but there's been a lot of effort from Becky and Sri and Eric and many people making it look as easy as it is. I'm just cognizant of the time. We just have a couple minutes left. I'm just going to throw up our contact information up on the slide, and I'm going to give the last word to Chris, just to an inspirational end on the idea of citizen science.
Thank you. Nothing's more inspirational than to be asked to inspire when everyone wants to go out and have their photo taken and then go to the pub. What I wanted to do at this point was I was looking for a pithy quotation from a volunteer about how Zooniverse had changed their lives, and we actually have lots of those, but it seemed slightly trite to pick one. But what I did do was look through. We've got a thread in our Slack called Zooniverse is Awesome, where we just throw everything that reminds us what we're up to. And I think often when I talk about Zooniverse, I casually drop 2 million volunteers. We've had nearly 1 billion classifications. The scale of this effort is overwhelming, but it's the individuals on both sides that make this. And the common theme from researchers in astronomy and elsewhere is that this sort of project reminds them why they do astronomy in the first place. Hearing from the citizen scientists who are excited about the fact that they've seen your data, or that they think they found something, genuinely is motivating. And I've come to think of the Zooniverse projects that I'm involved in as my sort of personal motivation for doing my science. Partly because it's changed the science I do, but mostly because it's a reminder of the joy of what we're all up to. And weirdly, I think that's what the citizen scientists say as well. When you look at their comments, they're mostly just excited to have been given this chance. It's often a bunch of people who, for whatever reason, whether it's cultural or just because of chance, never thought they'd get to participate in science. Maybe they're people who spend a lot of time hearing about science, and maybe they spend no time at all. But they're a bunch of people who are surprised to find themselves discovering things about the universe. And hearing that excitement is amazing. We also know that it motivates our citizen scientists to go and find out more about science. So these projects are engines of motivation on both sides. And maybe that's the inspirational thought for the last thing on the second day of a conference. And we're around all week. Do come and talk to us. But I hope this has been motivational for lots of you, and I'm looking forward to seeing what projects you build.
Thanks for coming, everyone. I really appreciate it. And online.